Digital media editor Warren Frey, and I have with me Journal of Commerce staff writer Russell Hixson, who's just been at the Canadian Construction Association's first ever virtual conference. So, Russell, take it away. What did you see today in this initial day?
Yes, I attended the first day of Virtually Unstoppable. I think that's the theme that they're going with this year. I attended the keynote by General Rick Hillier. I think that's how I pronounce it. He talked about leadership, and he actually was. It's interesting because he just finished working with Doug Ford, Premier Doug Ford, in Ontario, helping coordinate the vaccine rollout. And so he's just been very involved in a lot of different things. And it was interesting to hear him address the construction industry. He talked about how, we want you to get back to work. Well, they are working, but, he says that there's a lot of building that needs to be done. And, once the pandemic is behind us, there's going to be a ton of opportunity. He talked about his time as chief of the defense staff. And one of the first things he did when he started that job was he got on a plane and he tried to visit every single base and ship or airfield that he could with the Canadian Armed Forces. And he tried to talk to as many of the 100,000 or so soldiers as he could. And he says he talked to and met with and presented to about 70 to 80,000 soldiers. So almost all of them. And he said for him, that was kind of his job interview, his pitch to, why you should follow me, why I should be your leader. He said that's really important. And he had a lot of other tips, including, finding who are the toxic people, who are the negative people, because he said that kind of attitude and that kind of aura, it's contagious and it'll destroy your organization. He also talked about finding, leaders among your staff. There's people who are unofficial leaders and you need to nurture them and you need to develop them and you need to instill values in them that you think are important, or they'll follow different values that, they're going to lead no matter what. And so he said you need to make sure that they're leading with the values that you have. So it was a great keynote and I think a lot of people enjoyed it. And then I also attended a session about federal procurement, trying to win federal contracts. And it was interesting. That doesn't sound particularly, flashy, but it ended up being very interesting because they had two federal officials who are deeply involved in defense contracts and other just general construction procurement for the federal government. They talked about how the strategy now is they don't necessarily want just to hire a contractor. They really want to partner with the private sector because I think the federal government is shifting over to doing more social procurement. It's kind of mirroring what I'm also seeing just in the general construction industry is, a lot of, especially the more progressive and kind of cutting edge companies, they already have kind of robust social procurement programs, or those are in development, but that's definitely becoming more and more the norm. And the federal government is no different, and they want to be a part of that as well. Specifically right now, I think their goal is Indigenous participation. And so, contractors, people who bid on these projects, who have, ideas about how to include Indigenous people, who have innovative ways to deliver projects, those are the things that they want to see. They want someone who can partner with them, who isn't going to just work for them. So that was interesting. And then they also talked about, one of the major barriers to some government work, which is you have to have security clearances for a lot of stuff. And they talked about how right now they're trying to streamline it to where it can be more transportable. So where if you get security clearance for one department, it carries over to maybe other departments. And then they're also trying to cut down on unnecessary clearances where people will get cleared and then never even win or bid on a government contract. And so what was the point of having them cleared or going through all that work to do it? Those are the sessions that I virtually attended today on the platform. It's pretty interesting. I think by now, I think as you're probably aware as well, me and you have attended, a year into this pandemic, I've attended a lot of virtual conferences,
Yeah,
and
same here,
they just seem to be getting better and better. And I think everyone's very used to the format. It seems to be going smooth and definitely learning a lot.
That's what I was going to ask, because we've been to a bunch of quote unquote real CCAs,
Sure.
in person ones anyway.
Probably easier to attend, I'd say that, because I think the CCA often their conference moves around all over the place. Sometimes it's in the US, sometimes it's overseas. It's been in, obviously, in Canada many times. I'm sure that, sometimes people can make it, sometimes they can't. But this, all you got to do is go on your computer and log in, and you're there, and you can view all the stuff, and you can ask
Mhm.
questions, and yeah, no, I thought it was great.
So what's coming up? We have a couple more days of the CCA's virtually unstoppable. What do you have on the go in the next couple days of that?
Yeah, on the 25th, well, I should say that our whole staff is going to be covering something every day. We can't cover everything. There's a lot, but we've kind of picked stuff. And so people from the Daily Commercial News, our sister paper out east, they'll be covering stuff. And then on the 25th, I'll be covering global connectedness and, just kind of people giving their insights from around the world about construction. Um, and then also, I'll be covering a session where they will be talking to CCA President Mary van Buren, and she's going to be discussing Canadian politics. And I know the CCA does a ton of advocacy work. They have relationships with a lot of politicians and government officials where they work to try and further the goals of the members. And try and get legislation passed and do also advocate for all sorts of things and issues. So I'm sure she has a ton of interesting things to say about Canadian politics.
Okay, great. I'm looking forward to seeing that coverage. And also, if you could listen to this podcast and the Friday podcast, and if you want, you can check out our special Monday podcast about the Ontario budget, which is coming tomorrow, or actually today, as you listen to this. You can get all that on Amazon Music, on Apple Podcasts, and on Spotify, and also on the DCN and JOC websites. So thanks.